Hey everybody, John Ploskina here. And in case you haven't been following this story, an employee of Google recently posted a white paper where he questioned the idea that differences in representation for things like gender in Google and other tech companies may be the result of inherent differences between groups of people and not the result of the more typical explanations like racism and sexism. Now, he posted a fascinating paper that is pretty long, it's about 10 pages, but it's well worth a read. Here's a quote from it that kind of sums up the whole thing. I value diversity and inclusion. I am not denying that sexism exists, and I don't endorse using stereotypes. When addressing the gap in representation in the population, we need to look at population-level differences in distributions. If we can't have an honest discussion about this, then we can never truly solve the problem. Now, he goes on to discuss the issue in very frank and honest terms without using incendiary language or anything like that. Read the doc if you haven't. It's very interesting reading, especially in light of the reaction to this paper. So let's take a look at some of the reactions that this paper has received. We'll start with Google's own Vice President of Diversity, Integrity, and Governance, Danielle Brown. She says, like many of you, I found that it advanced incorrect assumptions about gender. I'm not going to link to it here, as it's not a viewpoint that I or this company endorses, promotes, or encourages. Diversity and inclusion are a fundamental part of our values and the culture that we continue to cultivate. We are unequivocal in our belief that diversity and inclusion are critical to our success as a company, and we will continue to stand for that and be committed to it for the long haul. Now, some other responses to this paper from inside Google have leaked online. Let's take a look at some of those. Management, please stop pacifying and take an actual position to stop this madness right now. There are certain alternate views, including different political views, that I do not want people to feel safe to share here. I intend to silence these views. They are violently offensive. Now, that author later accused some conservatives of not having souls. That's very tolerant of him. Everyone involved in that, I am a pathetic man-baby who is unable to deal with the modern world, needs to get the bin. You should absolutely punch Nazis. When Google appears to be doing very little to quell the hostile voices that exist inside the company, I want those hostile voices to know. I will never, ever hire or transfer you onto my team, ever. I don't care if you are a perfect fit technically or whatever. I will actively not work with you, even to the point where your team or product is impacted by this decision. I'll communicate why to your manager if it comes up. So obviously what we're seeing here is a lot of whining and complaining, some threats of violence, and really overall a complete dismissal of the logical points and facts that are brought up by the paper. And one thing that I do not see anywhere mixed in with the garment rending is a factual rebuttal of what the paper has to say. Something that I can teach you from my lifetime of arguing about politics and philosophy and religion is that it's really, really fun to prove somebody wrong. It's a really good feeling when you can put together a well-crafted argument and cite your sources and completely and utterly destroy your opponent in a debate. So whenever you see things like this, wherever you see this irrational screeching and complaining and no attempt to offer a factual rebuttal, it is often because there is no way to make a factual rebuttal. So with that in mind, I want to introduce you to a concept from evolutionary biology, and that is the idea of sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism is the condition where the two sexes of the same species exhibit different characteristics beyond the differences in their sexual organs. The condition occurs in many animals and some plants. Differences may include secondary sex characteristics, size, color, markings, and may also include behavioral differences. So human beings, if you haven't figured it out already, are sexually dimorphic, obviously. And that's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing at all that women and men in general have different motivations and goals and interests. That's nothing to be upset about, and it certainly doesn't mean that we can't welcome women who genuinely want to be part of the technology industry and who genuinely have the talent into the fold. If this paper was arguing for excluding women from technology, even if they had the talent, I'd be one of the people railing against it. Although, of course, I would use logic and facts and reason to argue against it, and that seems to be something that Google and the SJWs can't seem to do. So, of course, it has now been revealed that the man who authored this paper was James Damore, and that he has summarily been fired. It's strange to see a company that was founded on quality engineering like Google sink to a level like this. It's actually pretty pathetic. But this is illustrative. Combine the firing over the letter with other creepy stuff that Google has been up to recently, like its creepy censorship on YouTube, and its conjoining with the Obama administration. So meanwhile, Breitbart will be publishing a series of secret interviews with Google employees called The Rebels of Google. Let's take a look at the first interview with a guy known only as Hal. Witch hunts are a well-known cultural problem at Google. The company is currently facing a federal complaint filed by the National Labor Relations Board in April for interfering with employees' legal right to discuss workplace diversity and social justice initiatives. The complaint alleges that Senior Vice President Urs Holzel, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and numerous managers in his organization actively stoked up witch hunts in 2015 and 2016, intended to muzzle low-level employees who raised concerns about the company's practices. A lot of social justice activists essentially spend all day fighting the culture war and get nothing done. The company has made it a point to hire more people like this. The diversity gospel has been woven into nearly everything the company does, to the point where senior leaders focus on diversity first and technology second. Hal also gave specific examples of how employees of Google who question the diversity social justice warrior narrative are not given due process and are harassed by other employees and counseled by human relations. So when asked if Google was trying to censor political opinions on platforms like YouTube and their search engine, this is what he had to say. That is absolutely what Google is trying to do. The pro-censorship voices are very loud, and they have the management's ear. The anti-censorship people are afraid of retaliation, and people are afraid to openly support them because everyone in the management chain is constantly signaling their allegiance to far-left ideology. At this point, it's pretty hard to avoid the conclusion that Google is a totalitarian, neo-fascist institution. So DuckDuckGo is a pretty good search engine. Are there any decent alternatives to Gmail and YouTube? Because I'm kind of stuck on these platforms at this point. And never forget that you live in a society where you can be singled out, harassed, and ultimately fired for having specific political and scientific views. This is really disconcerting. This reminds me of what you saw back when people would burn each other at the stake over doctrinal disputes within Christianity. You know, maybe the PC crowd really would burn us at the stake if they could. Sometimes I think so. Their rhetoric is vicious and hateful. And look what's happening in a place like Canada where they don't have the First Amendment. You can be prosecuted for questioning details of the Holocaust narrative. Even if you try to prove in court that your position is true, it's not a defense. And the government is now mandating the use of specific pronouns. And you've seen, maybe, if you're not aware, that Jordan Peterson is being harassed not just by the government of Canada and by the university that he works for, but by Google. His YouTube account was recently mysteriously closed as a result of him refusing to use these pronouns. So freedom of speech is under terrible threat in Western civilization. We need to keep our eye on stuff like this, and we need to figure out alternatives for these big social media platforms because they are the next generation of the information ghetto. This is how the elite is going to suppress opinions that it doesn't like. But other than that, that's all I got. So it's a harsh world out there, my friends. Keep thinking and be careful what you say. It just might get you in trouble at work. Bye-bye.